Let's talk to Harry Fone first, though, grassroots campaigner manager at the Taxpayers Alliance, because as you will probably know, yesterday Boris Johnson did something that he'd been promising to do for quite a long time, and which Dominic Cummings had suggested they should do, which was basically scrapping the Department for International Development. They've basically merged it into the Foreign Office, and so what it means for the taxpayer, we're about to find out. Harry, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Is this the sort of the death knell, or the beginning sounding of the death knell for certain civil service departments, which were of course sort of put under threat, I suppose, or put on notice by Dominic Cummings way back before coronavirus was even spoken about?
Well, it might be too early to say, but it's certainly a welcome first step. I mean, we've been campaigning on foreign aid spending now for ever since our inception, basically. And I think what's important, though, is Boris and the government are listening to the recommendations by us, the Taxpayers Alliance, but ultimately, the wider calls from taxpayers. And it was really great to hear in Boris's statement yesterday that he said, taxpayers must get the maximum possible value for every pound that is spent.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what the end result of this has got to be, of this merger, is that less taxpayers' cash is being wasted, because we've seen so many examples of wasteful spending in our foreign aid budget.
Well, we totally have. And I mean, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it, because on the one hand, we're giving money to countries that are in some ways better off than we are. But then we get told, well, that's because we want to do trade with them, like China, for example, which is the owner of most of the property in parts of London. And yet, the state that China is in, economically, far better than the state we're in, and we're sending them money. And then we're told, well, that's because we want them on side for this or for that or for something else. Same with India. They've got their own space program. We're sending them money for some other project. And it does seem almost as though somebody's just sitting behind a desk in Whitehall picking projects that they like the look of.
Well, indeed. I mean, some of the examples we've seen over the years, one of the famous ones is the Ethiopian Spice Girls, who got about nine and a bit million pounds.
Right.
But then also, on the other hand, we haven't been able to spend this money on places such as Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands. Remember the Hurricane Irma back in 2017?
Yes.
We weren't legally allowed to do that, which seems absolutely ridiculous. A genuine, humanitarian crisis, and we weren't able to help in that circumstance. I think one of the things about this merger, though, where it doesn't go far enough, is that we have this 0.7% target that we have to spend every year. And I believe in 2013, civil servants were getting to the end of the financial year. They had about 8 weeks left. They still had £1 billion to spend, which is probably where some of these ridiculous things came from, because they just, quick, do it, get the money out the door sort of thing. And I think the 0.7% target has got to go, and the existing legislation actually gives framework to you don't have to meet it. Basically, two of the stipulations are any substantial change in gross national income as a result of economic circumstances. Well, I think that's fair to say that's happening now. A change in fiscal circumstances impacting tax take, public spending, and public borrowing. Again, I think that's happening now. So I think they should look to scrap that target, make sure that money does get where it's needed at home and abroad, but doesn't go on a lot of these silly projects we've seen over the years.
Absolutely right. And so what will happen, do you think, or what are you hearing will happen to the civil servants who were working in DfID? David Cameron, of course, has come out today and been very critical of Boris Johnson for abolishing it. But, he would say that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, the history of the whole, because it used to be the Overseas Aid Department or something like that.
Yeah.
It's been merged and demerged many times, going back about 50 years or so. In theory, there should be plenty of savings made in the merger. We should need less staff. We should be able to share resources. Everything's going to come under one department. You're not going to have two departments fighting against, each other in theory. It should mean that it's easier to put the nation's best interests at heart when it comes to aid-making decisions. But as I say, this is going to be the ultimate test. The ultimate goal must be that taxpayers' cash is not being wasted at the end of this, and ideally, it's being, there's an ultimate saving to the taxpayer. That is the key thing, because foreign aid was about £8 billion in 2010. It's now £15.2 billion last year. And as I say, when I've got some examples here. You see, there was my colleague found, it went to training imams to preach against smoking in Pakistan, dance and juggling lessons in Tanzania, conserving eels in the Philippines, and salt reduction projects in China.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not a good use of taxpayers'
It's like it's
cash.
been written by some comedy team, isn't it, really? I mean, it's almost like they're kind of thumbing their nose at us and going, what do you make of this?
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, we are in a situation in this country where we are running a budget deficit every year. This is not how our money should be being spent. The tax burden is at a 50-year high. Foreign aid and helping countries that have genuine humanitarian crises is, I think is very noble that as a country we want to take this on, but things like that just don't make any sense to most people.
No, it really doesn't make any sense at all. And so, as I said, I know it's hard for you to answer this question, but could this be the beginning of a kind of slimming down process in Whitehall?
Well, I think so. I mean, I hope so. I should say. I mean, we've been campaigning on cleaning up the state for years and years and years, and we have so many bloated departments who get people in these departments on very generous salaries. We've talked about this before, and I don't think taxpayers are seeing bang for their buck. So we've got to get to a situation where our civil service, our government departments are as slimline and streamed as possible. They are, as Boris says, using getting the maximum possible value for every pound that taxpayers spend. I'll say it again, tax burden is at a 50-year high. There's not much further we can go in squeezing more money out of the taxpayer.
Mm.
So these government departments have got to learn. They've got to get in line. If they were in the private sector, they'd soon learn a thing or two about efficiency.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Harry, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Harry Fone there from the Taxpayers Alliance, Grassroots Campaign Manager.